In 2008, in the town of Crystal Lake, the famous and terrifying Jason Voorhees was captured by the US government. 2 years later, he is being held prisoner at the town's research institute, led by Chief Rowan, who plans to put the creature into cryogenic suspension. While waiting for the cryogenic machine to be ready, Rowan sends one of the guards to check on the prisoner. Arriving at the scene, the guard sees Jason chained up and covers his entire body with an old blanket. Minutes later, Dr. Wimmer arrives at the research center with Sergeant Marcus to transfer Jason to a military base. Thanks to his regenerative abilities, the prisoner could become a valuable weapon for the army, in addition to bringing about major scientific innovations. Rowan is against the idea, as Jason is an uncontrollable threat, but Dr. Wimmer intends to take him anyway. The scientist then goes to meet the prisoner, but as soon as he removes the blanket, underneath it is the body of a chained soldier. Soon after, Jason appears and attacks the group, with the soldiers firing their weapons at him, but the bullets cause no damage. Desperate, Dr. Wimmer tries to escape, but Jason throws his chains attached to a harpoon, hitting the scientist's body. Across the room, Rowan hears the screams and goes to see what happened, but finds only Sergeant Marcus, who succumbs to his injuries. Without wasting any time, she takes his gun and flees to the lower floor, with Jason following close behind. Finally, Rowan hides inside a chamber, but when Jason follows her, she shoots the monster and pushes him into the cryogenic machine. Rowan then activates the machine and traps him inside, but before he is frozen, Jason breaks through the machine's door with his machete, injuring Rowan. Because of this, the cryogenic liquid from the machine begins to leak through the opening and the two are frozen inside the chamber. Centuries later, in the year 2455, Earth has become so polluted that humanity has had to move to another planet, which they have named Earth 2. The surviving humans make expeditions to the original planet in search of valuable items or even survivors. On one of these expeditions, Professor Brandon Lowe, along with his group of students, travels to Earth 1, where they find the old Crystal Lake Research Center. The group explores the site until they reach the cryogenic chamber. Inside, they see a mysterious man frozen inside the machine, holding a machete and wearing a hockey mask. In addition to him, the team finds Rowan, whose body has been preserved all these years thanks to the cryogenic state. Professor Brandon then decides to take them both to his ship, but when Azrael tries to move Jason, his body begins to fall and the machete removes the young man's arm. Despite this, the android KM uses an instant effect medication on him and promises to restore Azrael's arm when they return to the ship. After this incident, the group travels by space shuttle to their ship called Grendel, and once there, they prepare the two bodies for cell restoration. While Jason is thawed, Azrael has his arm reconstructed, and the professor activates the machine to revive Rowan. After a few minutes of the procedure, the young woman awakens, but upon seeing Professor Brandon, Rowan is frightened and slaps the madman in the face. After calming down, she asks where the thing is and says that it must be caught as soon as possible. Believing that the survivor is under the effect of years in cryogenics, the professor asks her to calm down and reveals that she has been frozen for over 400 years. Rowan is stunned by this news, but the professor assures her that she is safe and asks the team to accommodate her in one of the rooms. Minutes later, Brandon calls Dieter, his financial advisor, saying he has found 2 survivors still alive on Earth 1. One of them, Rowan, has already awakened, but the other remains frozen, and according to the computer, his name is Jason Voorhees. The professor believes he can make good money from this discovery, but upon hearing the name Jason, Dieter recognizes him as the famous creature from Crystal Lake. Brandon doesn't care about that and just instructs the team to continue the cell reconstruction process. Adrian is then put in charge of this and she inspects Jason's body while activating the machine to melt all the ice. She goes to check the survivor's cells under the microscope, but Jason awakens and attacks the young scientist. She tries to defend herself, but the monster grabs her head and pushes her into the cryogenic liquid, freezing her in a matter of seconds. Finally, Jason eliminates Adrian, pushing her head against the sink and leaving her in pieces. Now that he is free again, he grabs a sharp machete he finds in the lab and leaves the ship in search of more victims. Meanwhile, Professor Brandon goes to Rowan's room to bring her food and asks how she ended up in the cryogenic chamber. Rowan reveals that she was the head of the research institute at Crystal Lake and was responsible for capturing Jason Voorhees. For 2 years, she tried to eliminate him in various ways, but due to his regeneration, the only solution was to keep the prisoner in cryogenic suspension. After hearing everything, the professor introduces her to the rest of the team, including the head of security, Sergeant Brodsky. Shortly after, Waylander appears, bringing the rusty machete he found next to Jason's body. Upon learning that the Crystal Lake monster is also on the ship, Rowan warns Brandon that he is very dangerous and needs to be stopped as soon as possible. The professor replies that there is nothing to worry about, as he is being kept safe in the laboratory. To prove it, Brandon takes her there, only to find Adrian's lifeless body. Sergeant Brodsky then sounds the alarm and summons his security team, as there is a hostile passenger inside the ship. At that moment, Stoney and Kinsa are in the bedroom having a romantic moment when they hear Brodsky's call. Stoney goes to see what happened, but unfortunately for him, as soon as he opens the door, Jason appears on the other side and strikes him with the machete. Kinsa despairs and tries to help her boyfriend, but Jason pulls the young man into the hallway and finishes him off right there. Desperate, the young woman runs to the lab and tells the group what happened to Stoney. Faced with this situation, the sergeant orders the professor to lock himself and the students in the second lab, while he and his team stay behind to face Jason. In another part of the ship, Azrael and Soldier Dallas are playing a holographic video game, where they must destroy aliens to advance to the next level. Suddenly, Jason appears in the game and uses his machete to eliminate the alien and the two players. Azrael is annoyed that the guy is disrupting his game and turns off the hologram, but is confronted by Jason, who grabs him by the neck. Dallas then pulls out his gun and shoots the creature, which releases Azrael and goes to attack the soldier. Dallas has nowhere to run, but Azrael jumps on the monster's back and tries to squeeze him. However, Jason is stronger than they thought, and in addition to grabbing Azrael, he breaks his spine with his knee. Shocked by the scene, Dallas continues to shoot at Jason, but he grabs him by the head and slams it against the wall. Far away, Brodsky gathers his team to eliminate the intruder, but Brandon tries to convince him to bring Jason back alive, as he is very valuable merchandise. He even promises to pay $500,000 in cash, but the sergeant only cares about the crew and promises to finish off the creature anyway. With everything ready, Brodsky and his soldiers begin searching the entire ship until they find the bodies of Dallas and Azrael. Seeing that the situation is more serious than he thought, the sergeant orders the team to intensify their search for Jason. Meanwhile, Crutch, the team's biologist, is tending to his plants when he hears a noise coming from inside his room. He thinks it was just his imagination, but when he looks in the mirror, he sees Jason's mask reflected in it, advancing toward him. Just as the creature is about to finish him off, Brodsky and his team appear at the last second and shoot Jason. Crutch takes the chance to escape, but in the middle of the shootout, Jason also flees. Not knowing where the monster went, the sergeant orders his team to split up and search everywhere. During the search, Sven, one of the soldiers, is caught off guard by Jason, who finishes him off with a blow to the neck without difficulty. At the same time, Soldier Condor is also searching for the creature when Jason appears in front of him and tries to attack him with his machete. However, Condor dodges the attack and goes on to face the villain, exchanging punches and kicks against him. Despite his skill, the monster grabs him with his hand and throws him towards an iron bar, eliminating the soldier. Shortly thereafter, Brodsky attempts to contact Sven and Condor, but neither responds to his call. It doesn't take long for Giko, another member of the team, to find the bodies of her colleagues, and she reports everything to the sergeant, who decides to go after Jason alone. However, Giko also goes after the masked man, but like her colleagues, Jason attacks her by surprise, striking her directly in the neck. Soon after, Soldier Briggs sees Giko approaching, but her injury is severe and she loses her life in front of her partner. Enraged, Briggs sees Jason approaching and unloads all the ammunition from his weapon at him. The shots end up pushing the monster backwards, and he falls on top of a huge iron anchor. Believing the villain has been defeated, Briggs tells Brodsky everything, who orders the soldier to keep an eye out until he arrives. The soldier says there is nothing to worry about, but the madman ends up getting distracted, and when Jason gets up, he cuts Briggs in half with a single blow. At that moment, Brodsky runs to meet the soldier, but instead, he comes across Soldier Kicker, hanging from the same anchor. With this latest loss, the sergeant is the only survivor of the team and tries to find Jason, but the villain appears from behind the wall and grabs him. The sergeant tries to resist, but Jason strikes his body with 2 blades and leaves him lying on the floor. Now that the entire defense team has been eliminated, Professor Brandon, Rowan, and the others are on their own, while Jason is on the loose throughout the ship. Suddenly, someone knocks on the lab door and everyone fears it is Jason, but fortunately, Crutch appears on the other side. He narrowly escaped, but learns from the group that all the guards have been eliminated by the creature. Brandon tries to think of another plan and contacts the pilot Lewis, ordering him to head to Solaris, the nearest space station. Lewis obeys, and after adjusting the course, he activates the trip at the speed of light. Minutes later, they arrive at their destination, and Lewis requests permission to land at the station. The pilot informs them that they need urgent medical assistance, and the command center asks what is happening on the ship. However, before Lewis can say anything, Jason appears in the cockpit and, with a quick blow, eliminates the pilot. Back in the laboratory, Professor Brandon tries to calm everyone down, saying that on Solaris, there are several heavily armed soldiers to eliminate Jason. However, with Lewis out of the picture, the ship rapidly approaches the space station and crashes into its glass dome. The ship continues to hurtle out of control through the Solaris facility, causing a chain reaction that blows up the entire space station. After the impact, the group sees Solaris explode in space, and to make matters worse, the ship has been severely damaged. According to the computer, they still have enough oxygen reserves, but with the Solaris station destroyed, they have no way of calling for help. The situation becomes more desperate when someone starts forcing the laboratory door, trying to break through it. Seconds later, the knocking stops, but Jason appears from the window on the other side of the room and breaks in. In a panic, the group flees toward the hallway, with KM locking the security door. Unfortunately for the professor, he is unable to escape in time and is surrounded by Jason. The man begs for his life, promising to give him a lot of money if he lets him live. However, Jason just picks up his rusty machete, and seconds later the rest of the group hears Brandon's screams from the hallway. The survivors are running out of options when Crutch has the idea of trying to escape using the space shuttle. To do this, they need to collect supplies and get to the transport area, where they can transfer fuel from the ship to the shuttle. Everyone agrees with the plan and heads to the supply area, where they find some of the soldiers eliminated by Jason. After taking their weapons, the group decides to split up. Meanwhile, Waylander and Crutch reach the ship's cockpit, where they see Lewis's body scattered everywhere. After cleaning everything up, Crutch activates the command to transfer fuel from the ship to the space shuttle. At the same time, Rowan heads to the transport area, when suddenly she finds Sergeant Brodsky still alive. Using the communicator, she contacts the rest of the group and asks for help to carry the sergeant, with Waylander answering the call. Rowan then leaves Brodsky and goes to meet Waylander, but when the two return to the scene, the sergeant has disappeared. Crutch then orders Waylander to return to the cockpit, but Professor Brandon's head appears at his side, held by Jason. The monster then pulls Crutch and begins to slam his head against the electrical system until it is completely destroyed. Hearing her colleague's screams, Kinsa despairs, and as soon as she reaches the space shuttle, she locks herself inside. Janessa asks her colleague to open the door, but she is so scared that she refuses to let anyone in. Shortly after, Rowan and Waylander find Janessa, and the young woman tries to convince Kinsa to open the door, but she continues to refuse. In the distance, they hear a loud noise and believe it is Jason approaching. This only makes Kinsa even more frightened, and instead of opening the door, the madwoman pulls a lever, starting the space shuttle's engines. The problem is that it was still attached to the ship, and as a result, the shuttle collides with the hull and explodes into 1,000 pieces. Not only have they lost their only chance of escape, but Jason appears and sets out to attack the group. Then Sunaran appears and introduces everyone to KM, in an updated version for combat. The android then challenges Jason to fight, but in response, he throws the machete at her, piercing her body. The monster then goes to retrieve the machete, but KM was faking and pushes Jason away with several shots. Not satisfied, KM begins to attack him fiercely, and after shooting his entire body, she prepares to finish them off. However, Jason does not give up and knocks her to the ground with a kick and is about to remove her head. However, in a surprise attack, Brodsky appears and stabs Jason in the shoulder with a dagger, saving the android. Once again, KM goes on the attack, and after reloading her weapons, she shoots again, until she removes the villain's arm. Then she picks up a larger caliber weapon, and with the first shot she removes Jason's leg, followed by another that destroys his head. Finally, Jason is defeated, and the group rushes to take Brodsky to the lab to restore his body. In a short time, the sergeant's injuries are healed, but the ship's computer shows that there has been damage to the hull and a leak is occurring. If nothing is done, within 30 minutes, the ship will implode, taking everyone with it. Luckily, the group receives a call from another ship called Tiamat, which received an emergency call and came to rescue them. However, if they don't arrive in time, the ship will be destroyed and the crew of the Tiamat will also be hit by the impact. The group then tries to come up with another plan, and Rowan has the idea of separating the ship from the sector where the leak is occurring. If all goes well, the ship will continue to function and they will have enough time to escape. Brodsky suggests collecting explosives from the supply area to separate the sectors manually, and the group rushes to get there. Unbeknownst to them, Jason's destroyed body remains in the lab, and an electrical discharge reactivates the computer. Thanks to this, the cell reconstruction machine begins the process of regenerating Jason, using synthetic skin to replace the parts that were destroyed. Nearby, the group collects the explosives and spreads them throughout the sector, when a tremor causes everyone to lose their balance. After recovering from the shock, a new enemy appears before them, with the Crystal Lake masked man stronger than ever in his cyborg form, Uber Jason. Even seeing the enemy's evolution, KM pulls out her weapons and shoots at Jason, but his new shell is much more resistant. The android then tries to face him in hand-to-hand combat, but her blows cause no damage and Jason retaliates with a punch that removes KM's head. Sunaran tries to help the android, and Jason sets out to eliminate him, but Rowan saves his life and everyone runs toward the exit. However, Waylander is detained by Uber Jason, who begins to attack him, while his companions manage to escape. With no other choice, Janessa closes the corridor door, and in an act of sacrifice, Waylander presses the detonator, causing the entire corridor to explode. As planned, the damaged part is separated from the ship and everything indicates that Jason has been thrown into space. Although KM has been separated from her body, Sunaran managed to save her head and the android remains active. Seconds later, the captain of the ship Tiamat resumes contact, saying that he is approaching the ship and will be able to rescue them soon. Finally, the nightmare seems to be coming to an end, but a cybernetic hand reaches through the wall, revealing that Uber Jason is still alive. Because of this opening, the pressure begins to pull Janessa, who tries to hold onto the floor grates, and Rowan reaches out to save her. However, Janessa is unable to hold on and is pulled toward the small opening, her body completely destroyed. The group manages to reach the door and closes the passage, but Jason invades the ship and goes after them. The team flees toward an emergency exit, where the Tiamat ship will deploy a bridge so they can escape. However, more problems arise when the exit door won't open, as the ship's engine is rapidly losing power. Sergeant Brodsky decides to open the door from the outside and goes to the maintenance room to get a spacesuit. He needs to hurry, as Uber Jason is quickly approaching and not even the security doors can stop him. As soon as he leaves the ship, Brodsky finds the power source and begins to make repairs, but Jason is almost catching up with the group. Fortunately, Sunaran has one more card up his sleeve, and with Rowan's help, he connects KM's mind to the ship's computer. The android then uses Crystal Lake's records from the 1980s and transforms the room into a replica of the camp using holograms. The plan works, and Jason becomes confused, with KM adding 2 young campers to serve as bait for the monster. Just as he did in New York, Jason traps the 2 in sleeping bags and stabs them. Thanks to this distraction, Brodsky manages to recharge the ship's power and the exit door opens, with the Tiamat ship docking the bridge for rescue. Sunaran calls Brodsky back, but thanks to the damage caused by Jason, the ship begins to implode. With that, the hologram disappears and the creature notices the deception, running towards Rowan and Sunaran, who try to escape across the bridge. However, KM ends up being left behind, and Rowan rushes to rescue him when she sees Jason slowly approaching. As if that weren't bad enough, the captain of the Tiamat ship warns that he will undock the bridge in 10 seconds, and Rowan returns with the android, but Jason is about to cross the exit. Behind him, however, a hand presses the button and closes the hatch, revealing Brodsky. After that, the bridge is undocked, taking the survivors safely to the Tiamat, while Brodsky stays behind for a final duel with Jason. As soon as the Tiamat pulls away, the Grendel explodes and everyone believes that Brodsky and Jason are gone forever. However, from the window, Rowan and the others see the monster flying towards them, but in an unexpected attack, Brodsky stops him and the 2 fly through outer space. They end up on Earth too, and as soon as they cross the atmosphere, their bodies begin to burn due to the temperature and speed. At that moment, a couple who was camping sees a light crossing the skies and believes it to be a shooting star. The star ends up falling into a lake, and the young couple decides to go there to take a closer look. However, at the bottom of the lake, Uber Jason's mask sinks, indicating that despite everything, the creature from Crystal Lake is still alive, and this time it will claim more victims on its new planet. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.